Hi, it's Will from StormTheCastle.com, and here on YouTube you know me as Epic Fantasy. And this is a tutorial on how to make a sword, or how to forge a sword from start to finish, the whole thing. I show you everything from forging to hammering to polishing, assembly, everything in this video. It's all complete. So it's going to be a little bit quick, but that way you get to understand how a sword is made, completely. I do have a series of 6 videos on how to forge a complete sword that's more detailed. If you want to learn more and take your time more with all the different steps, and I'll put the link to that video right here, about right here somewhere. So let's take a quick look at this sword. This is a big sword, so you can see in comparison to my hand, and it's 37 inches overall, and the blade is actually 28.5 inches. So this is a good hand and a half sword here. It's big, it's heavy. This is not for little people, little guys. This is for a big guy. A lot of fun, quite a bit of work, but I really enjoyed it. Came out good, very bulky. It looks good, and it's ready to go. Except I haven't sharpened it. I will step back. I will step back real quick to let you look at this in comparison to my body, so you can see how big it is, and then we will launch into the tutorial on how to make a sword, a real sword. Dioramas, origami, catapults, and trebuchets, telescopes, terrariums, bonsai trees, and paper games, swords and shields, and real blacksmithing, model rockets, animation. I teach the art of real creation. StormTheCastle.com. Let's make something. Okay, here we go. I started out with a plain piece of 01 steel. It's 2 inches wide, 1/8 of an inch thick, and 36 inches long. And then I put masking tape on it and drew off the shape of it, the point and the tang there on the left, so I could know where to cut it to my shape. So I took some time figuring this out, to the shape of the sword that I wanted. Now with my masking tape and marks as a guideline, I go ahead and I cut out the point with a hacksaw. Now the tang is a little bit different. We don't want really, really sharp edges here where the tang meets the butt of the blade. We want it a little bit rounded, so I drilled holes there. The rounded will make the sword stronger. I marked it off, used a punch to punch center holes so I could drill it correctly. And there we go, I drilled it out. You're going to see, I'm going to take you through every single step. It's pretty fascinating what we do with all of this stuff. See, and there's the holes drilled. So now, that little diameter there is a little bit of a radius. If it were sharp, sharp, sharp corner, an angle, it could be prone to cracking. So I used the hacksaw to go ahead and cut off the tang. See, half the tang is cut now. Looks good. The point has been cut with a hacksaw. Oh, the medieval village. A lot further along now. And of course, files are terrific, Milling files. Clean it all up. And there it is. Now the whole thing is done. The shape of the sword has been pretty much established here. The point and the tang and the size of it. That's all set now. So now let's hit the forge. Crank up the forge. And I do have a tutorial on how to make a forge like this. I'll give you a link in a short video at the end of this video. Put the sword in there, and let's get going. Now what we really want to do here is basically just one thing with the hammering and the anvil, is establish the bevel on the blade. Both sides, left and right. We want to round those down so they come to an edge rather than be a flat piece of steel. So I work my way up the sword like this, taking my time. Takes time to do this, doing both sides of the blade, and I'm compressing that to bring it to an edge. Kind of like rounding it out. And you can see I cut in a few videos here just showing me working my way down the sword. And of course flip it over all the time. Even number of hammer blows on both the top and the bottom and both sides. And I work my way up. And I'd like to start at the butt of the blade and then finish at the point. Because the point is thinner and can be more sensitive. You don't want to overwork it. That's the way I like to do it. So once we've got the bevels all figured out, we're done with the hammering anyway. Clean this sword up. And I actually went through a lot of grits to do this. This takes time. You know, I started out with a rough, either a 60 or an 80 grit to get all of the stuff off, and then I started to actually kind of polish it. I worked my way through the grits. See? 120 paper, 220, I used 400, I used 500, and you're going to start to get that blade to look really nice. This takes time and work. This is a few hours here, but you see it's starting to look like a sword. But we don't want to finish polish it because we've got more work to do. We want to get it pretty close, like say to 400 grit. So now we got to harden and temper the sword. So let me crank up the sword forge that I made here, and I do have a tutorial on how to make this on my website in the blacksmithing section. Get the fire going. Now the thing about this is an air. This also has an air blower to blow air into it, and it has a long line rather than a circle where the heat is. There's a long line, so the whole length of the sword gets heat up. It's kind of nice. Let me put the blower on it. I forgot where I get that blower. I bought it online somewhere, but I like it. Then put the sword in there. Now this is what we're doing here is we're hardening the sword. We're going to bring it up to about 1800 degrees where it's cherry red hot. And then we're going to quench it in oil. And that will harden the sword. That's really a neat process. And how you know it's up to 1800 degrees is you check it with a magnet. When a magnet no longer sticks to it, you're ready to quench it. So you got to really tend the fire well. You don't want the point to overheat. You want it to be even. So once it's ready, so you move it around, move the coals around, move the sword around. Once it's up to temperature, and you can't see it that well here because of the sunlight, but it's up to temperature, then we quench it in the oil. Now this is just plain old motor oil. You can use transmission fluid, used motor oil, new motor oil, vegetable oil, and you quench it. And a lot of people talk about using water, but you only use water on certain types of steels, and the steel denotes that. So you have to check the type of steel you have and whether you quench in oil or in water. So there we go. So clean it off really good with emery paper. This only takes 5 minutes. We want to get it shiny again. It's really easy to do. Get it shiny again because the next part is tempering. Now we soften the sword just a little bit so it has some flexibility to it and it doesn't just shatter when you use it. And the way we do that is by the color that it changes. We want to get it for the most part to a wheat color. When the sword gets to a wheat color, we know it's been softened up a little bit and it's ready to go. And how we do this is by lifting it up off the fire. So we don't put it right in the fire, we get it away from the fire about 6 or 8 inches there. Put it right on top like that. And monitor it real close. We only want to get it up to about 800 degrees rather than the 1800 for forging, for hardening. So move it around, dip it down a little bit, keep flipping it over, watch it very carefully, and I'm going to show you a little bit video of where we want to get it about. It's going to slowly change color. It's going to go to a wheat color, which is perfect. It gets a little blue. It's a little bit over softened, but that's okay. Mine got a little bit blue. This is a little tricky. You can also do this with a blowtorch. But see the wheat color there? That's nice. A little blue, a little bit softer than we wanted to, but not too bad. It's okay. So it's been hardened, and once you get it to that color, you dip it in and quench it again to lock it into tempered. That's it. This sword is hardened and tempered. Now we start to really polish it. So I'm hitting the finer grits, 400, 500, 600, all the way up to 1200 grit. So yeah, it's starting to look like a sword. So you clean it off, you polish it really good, take your time with it. Let's move on to the handle assembly. This is pretty interesting. Piece of bar stock, steel for the guard, a piece of fine hardwood for the handle, and a piece of steel for the pommel. That's the assembly. I'll show you how I make all of these and put it all together. Let's start with this guard. I cut it out of a piece of bar stock. I think this is, 7 inches long. I think it's 3/4 inches wide. Now we need to fit it onto the tang of the sword, so I drill a series of holes in it. And this takes some time, but everything about a sword takes some time. See those holes? Very nice. Now we got to make it a slot rather than just holes. And I did that using a jeweler's saw and files, whatever you need to do. Break open those holes and turn it into a slot. And then I used files and emery paper on it to shape it a little bit, give it a little bit of a shape rather than just being a square. I had a lot of fun with it. And once I file it, then you use emery paper on it to polish it up. It looks pretty good. Now the handle. Block of hardwood. I cut it to the size I wanted with a saw. I bought this in a woodcraft store. They have all kinds of different cocoa bola, all kinds of wonderful woods, ebony. And offhand, I can't think of the name of this particular wood, but I really like it. It's when you polish it with tung oil, it really has a nice look to it. But anyway, I marked out the center of it because we got to get that on the tang of the sword, right? And then I drilled it. Same thing, you got to do a lot of drilling. Take your time with it. And because this handle is so large, a normal drill doesn't go all the way through it, of course. So I've got an 1/8 inch longer drill that I use to manually drill out that slot. See it? I think that drill cost me like $10. You know, keep working it, keep fitting it on the sword tang to see if it fits. Like that. Now we can shape it. Shape it to a handle shape with a lot of different tools. There's the belt sander. It'll go quick. You're not working with metal, it's just wood. And I use rasping file. See, it's starting to see like the handle. And one other thing I want to mention here too, that it's just, I'm sorry about this, well, and then I polished it with tung oil. And it really brings out the richness. And I actually did I think I did 6 coats. You polish it with tung oil, sandpaper it finally, polish it again with more tung oil. It really gets a really rich flavor, a rich look. But let me see if this is it. Yeah, one thing I wanted to show you that you can't see this very well, because it was late. You heat up the tang there with a blowtorch, and then you burn on the handle, force the handle on it, and it makes a really good fit. That's called burning in the handle. So let's move on to the pommel. This is 2-inch piece of steel that I sewed off a rod, and I drilled it out so it would fit, so the tang would fit right through it. So now let's assemble the whole thing. We're almost done here. I drilled a hole through the tang and the blade, and then pinned it. 16th inch pin. No, excuse me, 1/8 inch pin. Steel pin. All right, looks good. All right, nice snug fit. The blade sits well against the guard. And then the same thing to finish it off. I drilled through the pommel and the tang of the blade. And there's different ways you can do this. Some people thread the end of that and then put a nut on it. That's a nice way to do it. Maybe I'll do that with the next sword. But all the way drill through that. Make sure it's nice and tight. Got to get it nice and tight. And then pin it. See, I've just finished pinning it. And that's it. You're done. The assembly's done. Now we can do some cosmetics to it. I used emery paper, 600 and 1200 to really polish everything up here. Start polishing the pommel. And you don't see all the work I did. But, you know, that's the nature of polishing and sanding. You got to do a lot of work. So, touch up the pommel. Touch up the guard. And you can get really, really fine. You can even use a buffing wheel on this to really bring out the polish. You know, polish out the guard with the emery paper. And then the last bit I show you is I polish a little bit of the blade. So that's it. We've made a sword. What's this, like 13, 14 minutes? 12 minutes, almost 13 minutes. Thanks for watching. A lot more stuff on my website at stormthecastle.com. I got all kinds of blacksmithing stuff. And you want to make cardboard swords too, I got that. I got all kinds of weapons and armor. If you follow my channel, thank you very much. If you're a subscriber, thank you. If you're not a subscriber, think about subscribing. I do a lot of different stuff. All kinds of creative projects. You know, terrariums and dioramas and catapults and trebuchets and all kinds of things. There's a look at this finished sword. Could use a little more polishing. So there you go. The top video is the more extended version of making a sword, where I show you a lot more. The middle one is making a knife. And the bottom one is how to make a backyard forge just like I made. Thanks for watching. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video.